They called him Junior, barked orders at him, and laughed behind his back. But this young black mechanic was about to prove he was more than just a name on a jumpsuit. It was just another cold morning in Midtown Manhattan when 20-year-old Marcus Allen clocked in for work at the auto garage on 54th and Lexington. The city hummed with noise-honking taxis, the echo of jackhammers, but inside the garage, things moved slower. The other mechanics leaned on counters, joked crudely, and sipped coffee from oversized mugs. Marcus, however, didn't join the banter. With his grease-streaked jumpsuit zipped to his chest and sweat already lining his brow, he was hard at work under a lifted Ford Explorer, wrenching a bent axle back into shape. Marcus didn't stand out just because he was young, or black stood out because he worked like his future depended on it. And in a way it did. With a single mother working night shifts at the hospital bills piling up, and dreams of owning his own garage someday, Marcus had no room for mistakes. Yet despite his tireless effort, the environment was toxic. Older techs tossed him tools without respect. Management ignored the daily jabs unless he missed a deadline. Then their voices rose in front of customers. He kept his head down, swallowing insults, believing that hard work would earn him respect. But deep down he knew the truth in a place like this. No matter how skilled or disciplined you were, the rules were stacked against you the moment you walked in with the wrong skin tone. Marcus was halfway through tightening the suspension bolts on a Dodge Durango when the shop door creaked open and the chime above let out a faint ding barely audible over the buzz of tools and distant construction. Nobody in the garage looked up. Why would they? Walk-ins were common, and most got directed to the front desk, or ignored altogether. But Marcus happened to glance up from beneath the hood and noticed the man right away. Big guy. Weathered leather jacket clinging to his broad shoulders. Tattoos crawled up his neck like ivy, and his boots stomped across the greasy concrete with urgency. He looked out of place, not just because of his appearance, but because of the way his eyes scanned the room, fast and restless, as if searching for something that couldn't wait. He wasn't angry. No, this was something else. Fear. Panic, even. The kind that made a man's hands tremble when he reached the counter. "Car died just outside," he said, breathless. "I need help. My daughter's in the ER uptown. I have to get there. I just need a jump or a fix, whatever gets me back on the road." The receptionist, a woman named Linda, didn't even look up from her computer. Her neon-pink acrylic nails tapped away on her keyboard, as if his presence was nothing more than a momentary inconvenience. "Take a seat," she said flatly. "Someone will get to you." I don't have time to wait, ma'am." Linda sighed, finally lifting her eyes just enough to deliver her next line with venomous finality. "So everyone here's got somewhere to be." Behind the man, a few customers shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. One man in a blazer leaned toward his wife and whispered, "Jesus." "What's he doing here?" another muttered under his breath. Should've called a cab. The biker, because that's what everyone saw when they looked at him, glanced over his shoulder and caught the looks. The kind that weren't just dismissive, they were fearful, condemning. Marcus saw it all unfold while wiping his hands on a rag. And in that moment, it wasn't the man's jacket or tattoos that caught Marcus' attention. It was his eyes. They were frantic, not violent. Desperate, not dangerous. The kind of eyes Marcus had seen in his mother's face when she got the call that his grandmother had collapsed. The kind of eyes people didn't bother to look into when they'd already made up their minds about who you were. The biker turned to leave, shoulders sagging in defeat, fingers fumbling with his phone, probably to call a cab that might not even get there in time. That's when Marcus called out, "Hey, wait up." The man froze mid-step and turned. Marcus approached him, still holding his rag face calm, unbothered by the eyes now turning to watch. "What kind of bike?" Marcus asked. "Yamaha Cruiser," the man replied cautiously. "Something's off with the ignition. Want crank? I parked it right out front." "All right," Marcus nodded. "Let's take a look." The man hesitated before accepting a cold bottle of water Marcus offered him. His hands shook as he took it. "Thanks," he mumbled. "My kid took a bad fall. Internal bleeding. They said she might need surgery." Marcus crouched by the motorcycle out front. A quick scan told him it might just be a minor wiring issue, nothing he couldn't handle in 10 minutes. "I think I can fix this," he said without looking up. "You got 10 minutes?" "10 minutes'll take it," the man replied, his voice cracking with relief. Back in the shop, the air shifted. One of the other techs snorted. "Look at Marcus playing Captain Save-A-Biker." Another laughed, but Marcus didn't acknowledge them. He focused on the job, moving with purpose, blocking out the noise and the tension. But it thickened around them like smoke. That's when Carl Reynolds showed up, the shop manager, bald, heavyset, and always with a scowl that made him look like he hadn't enjoyed a single moment of his job in decades. He stopped cold when he saw the scene in the front lot, Marcus crouched beside a motorcycle, tools in hand, and a rough-looking stranger standing nervously nearby. "What the hell's this Reynolds barked?" Marcus stood up, keeping his tone even. "Just helping him out. Quick fix. He's got an emergency." "I didn't ask for a backstory," Reynolds snapped. "Who told you to work on that bike?" "No one but—" "He's not a customer," Reynolds barked again. "There's no work order, no ticket. You know the rules." The biker stepped forward, hands raised. "I'll pay whatever it costs. I'm not asking for a handout." Reynolds spun toward him, eyes narrow. "I don't care if you're offering a blank check. We don't do favors for people who walk in off the street looking like a threat." That word hung in the air, threat-like poison. Marcus flinched at the sound of it. He'd heard it before. Not directly, but implied. Whispered. Assumed. "He's not threatening anyone," Marcus said firmly. "He's trying to get to his daughter. If this were someone else—" "Enough," Reynolds cut him off, pointing back toward the garage. "Get to your bay. Now." The biker stepped back, trying to defuse things. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. You'll find another shop." But Marcus didn't move. He looked around at the room full of people techs with idle hands and full mugs, customers watching like it was theater, and spoke his voice low but unwavering. "You're really gonna let this man walk out when he's begging for help, and you've got 10 people standing around doing nothing? I've pulled doubles for this place, took every job no one else wanted. And the one time I help someone without asking for anything, you fire me," Reynolds sneered. "Pack your tools. You're done." The garage went silent. Marcus didn't protest. He didn't argue. He just nodded once, looked the biker in the eye, and said, "It's not your fault. They don't see you or me." And just like that, Marcus Allen, the best damn tech in the building, was unemployed for helping a desperate man no one else dared to. Marcus didn't say a word as he packed his tools. No one offered help. No one even made eye contact. The quiet hum of pneumatic tools returned business as usual, as if a man hadn't just been fired for doing what was right. He moved through the garage like a ghost seen, but not acknowledged. At his locker, the hinges squeaked as he tossed his gloves and unzipped his jumpsuit, halfway the weight of the last hour pressing hard on his shoulders. But Marcus wasn't angry, not in the way people expected. He wasn't fuming or shouting. What he felt was deeper, quieter, a kind of clarity. Because for the first time since walking into that garage 2 years ago, he'd acted in a way that was fully and unapologetically himself. He had done the right thing, even if it had cost him everything. Just as he was tightening the last latch on his toolbox, the door creaked open behind him. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. That voice, that smug nasal tone, could only belong to Carl Reynolds. "You here to cause more drama?" Reynolds asked, arms crossed, leaning in the doorway. Marcus replied calmly, not looking back. "Just picking up my things," Reynolds scoffed. "Could have had a real future here, kid. If you just followed protocol. You think playing hero earns you something you millennials think respect's handed out like candy." Marcus turned, then slowly locking eyes with the man who had tried to break him down for 2 long years. "I followed every rule you gave me. I stayed late. Took every crappy job no one else wanted. I kept my head down. And you still treated me like I didn't belong here." The shop manager opened his mouth, but Marcus didn't wait for a reply. He slung his duffel over his shoulder, walked past Reynolds without a backward glance, and pushed through the doors into the main garage bay. This time a few heads turned. Not many. Just enough. A silent acknowledgement of what he'd done, or what they hadn't. Maybe both. Linda, the receptionist, looked up as he passed the counter. "You forget something." Marcus didn't break stride. Just needed to see it one last time. The bell above the door jingled softly as he stepped out into the New York morning. The air was colder than before, but it felt honest, clean even. No job. No plan. Just a young man with a bag full of tools, and the firm knowledge that for once he hadn't compromised himself. He walked for blocks with no destination. Past street vendors and coffee carts, past glass towers and greasy diners. He wandered until he found himself across the street from a hospital, the one the biker had mentioned. He didn't even realize his feet had taken him there. Maybe part of him needed to know the man had made it in time. Maybe part of him needed to believe the sacrifice mattered. He sat on a bench, elbows resting on his knees, eyes scanning the entrance. Nurses hurried in and out. Tired parents juggled backpacks and paperwork. The world moved in rhythm. Then his phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from Jonasone, of the few new techs who'd ever shown him any decency. "They moved someone else into your bay, just so you know." Marcus read the message, then powered down the phone without replying. That part of his life, that version of himself, was over. Hours passed. He stayed on the bench longer than he intended, but he wasn't waiting for anything in particular. He was just letting it all settle, the weight, the change, the strange peace that followed a decision that cost him everything, but left him lighter. Eventually, he headed home. A 5-story walk-up in Harlem with peeling paint and a door that always stuck in the winter. He climbed the stairs, already bracing for a quiet night spent scrolling job boards and microwaving leftovers. But when he reached his apartment door, something stopped him cold. A note, taped to the peeling wood, written in black marker on a torn envelope. "Come back to the shop, right now. CEO." Marcus stared at it for a long moment. His heart caught between disbelief and hope. It wasn't a joke. No one in his building had that kind of handwriting, and no one from the garage had ever called him anything but kid, let alone left him a note signed CEO. He didn't rush, but his pulse picked up as he changed his shirt, grabbed his keys, and stepped back out into the cooling air. The sun was already dipping behind the high-rises as he reached the garage. On the surface, nothing looked different. Same lights, same hum of equipment. But inside, the atmosphere had shifted. Tense, quiet. The techs weren't lounging. They were gathered near the office hallway, whispering like they'd all been summoned, but didn't know why. Before Marcus could ask, the double doors to the back conference room opened. "Marcus Allen," a voice called. Firm, direct, familiar. He looked up. It was Mr. Robert Ellison, the CEO of the garage chain. Marcus had only seen him twice before, and always from a distance. Back then, the man had been wearing a tailored suit and walked like someone whose shoes had never touched oil-stained concrete. But today, he was in rolled-up sleeves and jeans, his face drawn and sleepless. And beside him, standing quietly, arms folded across his chest, was the biker. He was back. Marcus stepped into the conference room, unsure what to expect. The heavy double doors swung shut behind him, with a quiet thud sealing out the rest of the shop and the whispers that followed him like a shadow. The room was simple, no fancy decorations, just a long table, a coffee pot near the back, and a few chairs scattered around. But it was the people in the room that made his pulse quicken. The biker now, cleaned up a bit, but still wearing that worn leather jacket, stood near the window. His arms were folded, his expression unreadable, but there was something different in his posture now, a sense of calm, maybe even respect. At the head of the table stood Mr. Ellison. In his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and the calm, steady eyes of a man who'd seen things go sideways and kept them straight. Marcus had always known Ellison as the distant figure behind the curtain, someone you only saw during inspections or when things went very wrong. Apparently, today qualified. "Sit down," Marcus Ellison said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His voice wasn't cold. If anything, it was thoughtful measured. Marcus hesitated, but took the seat. He glanced briefly at the biker, who gave a faint nod. Not a smile, not even a grin, just a silent message that said, "You're not alone." Ellison leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. "I heard what happened yesterday. Actually, I heard everything. And frankly, I'm furious." Marcus blinked. "Sir, right." Ellison raised a hand gently. "Let me speak first." The room fell into a stillness so complete Marcus could hear the muffled sound of an air compressor hissing outside. "Yesterday," Ellison continued, "a man walked into one of my shops, panicked, desperate, trying to get to his daughter in the hospital. And what did he get? Dismissed. Judged. Treated like a criminal because of how he looked. By nearly everyone in this building." He paused, turning toward the biker. "Except for you." The biker, who had been silent until now, spoke quietly. "You didn't even blink," he said to Marcus. "I've walked into a lot of rooms where people crossed the street called security or looked right through me. You didn't do any of that. You just helped." Marcus looked down, unsure how to respond. "I wasn't trying to make a statement," he murmured. "He needed help. That's all." "That is the statement," Ellison said firmly. Then came the twist Marcus wasn't prepared for. "Marcus, meet my brother, Ray Ellison." Marcus' eyes widened as he snapped his gaze toward the biker. "Wait, what?" Ray gave a modest shrug. "I used to be a part of the business in the early days. Helped build it before I stepped back. Been off the radar for a while, but Bob here, he jerked his chin toward his brothers, till lets me wander in and out." Marcus was stunned. The man who had just been tossed out like a stray yesterday was the founder's brother. Ellison nodded. "Ray isn't just family. He's a co-founder. He's the reason this place even exists. So when I found out how he was treated, how you were treated, I knew something had to change. Immediately." Marcus felt a swirl of disbelief, pride, and confusion building in his chest. "So what now?" Ellison leaned back, opened a folder, and slid it across the table. "What now is this? I've reviewed your record. Marcus, your work is in the top 5% across all 10 of our locations. No formal complaints, high customer satisfaction, efficient turnarounds. And more importantly, yesterday, when character was tested, you passed where others failed." Inside the folder was a job offer. Lead technician, 54th Street garage location. Higher pay. Better hours. Management duties. Full benefits. A seat at the table. Marcus stared at the words, barely breathing. "You're serious?" he asked, almost whispering. Ellison smiled, not wide, but with the gravity of a man who didn't joke about promotions. "Your former manager Reynolds was terminated this morning, effective immediately. Discrimination of any kind, racial, social, visual, has no place here." Marcus exhaled sharply, trying to take it all in. Ray stepped forward now, extending his hand, not like yesterday, not tentatively, but with confidence. "I meant it when I said what you did mattered. You didn't just fix my bike, you gave me the chance to be with my daughter when she needed me most. And for that, I'll always be grateful." Marcus stood, reached out, and shook Ray's hand. This time it wasn't just a handshake, it was recognition, a connection. Two men who understood what it meant to be seen as something you weren't, and who chose, despite the odds, to act with integrity. He looked back at Ellison, still stunned. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Ellison said. "Just say yes." And Marcus did. Not with words, but with a firm, confident nod, the kind he hadn't dared give in 2 long years. The kind that said, "I belong here." As he walked out of that room, the other techs parted for him. Some nodded. Others lowered their eyes. No one laughed. No one sneered. And for the first time, Marcus Allen walked through that garage not as a shadow, but as a leader. The next morning, Marcus stood just outside the glass doors of the garage, the same garage that had once turned its back on him. The early sun reflected off the oil-slicked concrete, casting streaks of gold across the sidewalk. He clutched the same leather folder Mr. Ellison had handed him the day before, the words "Lead Technician" printed neatly on the top sheet inside. It still felt unreal. Less than 48 hours ago, he'd been fired for helping a stranger. Now he was walking back into the building with the authority to reshape what it stood for. As he stepped inside, the familiar chime rang again. Only this time heads turned not with judgment, but with something else. Curiosity, caution, maybe even respect. Linda, the receptionist who once ignored him while chewing gum and clicking her nails, glanced up and offered a tight nod before quickly returning to her screen. The other mechanics guys who had laughed when he was mocked or ignored him when he was disrespected now parted without a word as he passed through the bay. Marcus didn't strut. He didn't puff his chest or gloat. That wasn't his way. Instead, he walked with quiet confidence, shoulders squared, steps steady. He wasn't here to settle scores. He was here to raise the bar. He made his way to the back office, once off limits, now his domain, and set the folder down on the desk. His desk. The surface was dusty, the drawers cluttered, and a few coffee stains from past managers lingered. But he didn't mind. It was a start, a clean slate. He sat down, took a deep breath, and opened his notebook. His first task wasn't about cars or engines, it was about people. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and wrote across the top, "Garage culture, what needs to change?" First on the list, respect isn't optional. Marcus had spent too many days watching senior techs berate younger workers, crack racial jokes, and dismiss customers who didn't look right. That was over. From now on, every employee would sign a revised code of conduct that demanded accountability, not just performance. He would hold monthly meetings where anyone from the janitor to the front desk clerk could voice concerns without fear of retaliation. Next on his list, training, not intimidation. He remembered what it was like to be the rookie expected to perform without being taught, mocked when he hesitated and never trusted with serious work until he'd earned it by enduring hazing. Marcus vowed to create a mentoring system. Every new hire would be paired with a seasoned technot to haze them but to guide them. Skill mattered. So did compassion. He looked up briefly as Jonas, the shy, soft-spoken tech, who had once mumbled a kind word in the locker room, approached hesitantly. "Hey, Jonas," said, scratching at his neck. "Didn't know if I should come in." "You're fine," Marcus said, standing to greet him. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you. Got a few ideas I think you'll want to hear." They sat for 20 minutes, sketching out what a real apprenticeship program could look like. Jonas, quiet but clever, offered suggestions for online certification tools, how to track progress, and even suggested the garage could partner with local trade schools to recruit new talent. Marcus smiled, genuinely impressed. "You've got good ideas," Marcus said. "I want you helping me build this." Jonas blinked, visibly stunned. "Seriously?" "Yeah. And you're not going to be the only one. We're going to do things different here." Later that afternoon, Marcus walked the floor, watching, as his old workstation was now manned by someone new. A younger guy, maybe 19, fumbling with a torque wrench and clearly pretending he knew more than he did. The senior tech beside him rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath. Marcus stepped in. "Need a hand?" he asked. The kid looked up nervously. Yeah, I think I'm using the wrong setting." Marcus crouched beside him, demonstrated the adjustment, then handed the wrench back. "We all start somewhere. Don't sweat it." The older tech crossed his arms. "We gonna babysit now?" Marcus turned to him, calm but firm. "We're gonna lead, or we're gonna make room for people who will." The tech held his tongue. By closing time, the mood in the shop had shifted. People still moved cautiously, unsure how to navigate this new version of Marcus, but the silence wasn't loaded like it had been before. It was thoughtful, watchful. That evening, as the sun dipped low over the skyline, Marcus stood at the edge of the shop's front entrance, leaning against the doorway with a tired but fulfilled expression. The day had been long, challenging, but good. Better than any day had had in the last 2 years. As he watched the city move, people rushing to trains, buses idling at the corner, sirens faint in the distance, he heard a familiar rumble of a motorcycle engine. Ray, the biker, pulled up beside the curb and removed his helmet. "Heard you got the place running differently already," he said with a grin. "Trying," Marcus replied. "One step at a time." Ray nodded, looking up at the glowing signage of the garage. "Place looks the same, but it feels different." Marcus smiled. "That's the goal." Ray extended his hand again, same way he had in that conference room. But this time it wasn't just gratitude. It was acknowledgement, peer to peer. "You ever want to start your own shop?" Ray said. "You let me know. I've still got a few favors to call in." Marcus laughed softly. "He'll keep that in mind." As Ray pulled away into the growing night, Marcus remained there for a moment longer, feeling the hum of the city wrap around him. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was building something real. And for the first time in his young life, he wasn't just part of the system. He was the one reshaping it. The following week came with a chill in the air and a nervous energy humming through the shop. Marcus had barely settled into his new role as lead technician when he found himself staring at his first real test of leadership, one that mirrored his own experience almost too perfectly. It started on a Wednesday morning just before 9 a.m., when the front door creaked open and a young woman stepped inside. She couldn't have been older than 22. Her hands were tucked into the sleeves of a weathered hoodie, and she wore jeans with one torn knee and work boots scuffed down to their soles. Her hair was braided back tightly, and over one shoulder she carried a faded canvas duffel bag. The moment she crossed the threshold, the mood in the shop shifted. Conversations stalled. A few of the older techs exchanged glances. One guy near the break table muttered, "We hiring off Craigslist," now under his breath. Another whispered just loud enough for the front desk to hear, "Looks like somebody's niece got lost." Marcus, sitting in the office with Jonas, glanced through the glass and saw her standing awkwardly near the receptionist's desk. Linda hadn't even asked her name, yet just continued clicking away at her computer with one hand while texting with the other. Marcus stood. He didn't need to hear the jokes. He'd heard them before, felt them, worn them like an old jacket that never quite fit. He stepped out, crossing the shop floor with even, steady strides. "Morning," he said with a warm nod. "Can I help you?" The young woman looked startled for a second, then nodded. "Yeah. I applied for the apprentice position last month. Got an email for a trial day, said to be here at 9. Marcus extended his hand. "You're right on time. I'm Marcus Allen, lead tech. You're Maya, right?" She shook his hand, grateful. "Yes, sir," he smiled. "None of that sir stuff. Just Marcus is fine." Behind him, he heard the exaggerated scrape of a chair. "Didn't know we were letting high schoolers fix cars now," one of the senior techs quipped loudly enough to be heard. Marcus turned toward the voice. Frank, one of the veterans, good with diagnostics, but not so good with people. "Frank," Marcus said calmly, "I don't recall anyone checking your resume when you got hired. Let's give Maya the same courtesy." Frank shrugged but didn't say another word. Marcus led Maya to Bay 3, his old bay, and showed her around. He handed her a clean pair of gloves and asked her to shadow Jonas for the first few hours. "Jonas will show you the ropes." "Don't be afraid to ask questions," Marcus said. "This shop doesn't run on fear anymore. It runs on skill and respect." She nodded, her shoulders relaxing just a little. The morning passed without incident. Maya worked quietly, listening, observing, asking the occasional, thoughtful question. By lunch, she was helping Jonas rotate tires and identifying the components of a brake system. She wasn't lightning fast, but she was steady, eager, but the judgment still lingered. Marcus could feel it. It came in the form of side eyes when she asked for the socket wrench size. It came in smirks when she misread a torque chart and had to redo a calibration. And it came strongest after lunch, when a walk-in customer, an older man in khakis, and a quarter-zip fleece saw her working under the hood and froze. "Excuse me," the man said to Linda. Is she one of the mechanics? Linda blinked. She's training. The man frowned. No offense, but I'd rather someone more experienced take a look at my car. I've got a long drive and I don't want mistakes. Marcus, hearing this from across the room, didn't hesitate. He walked over, calm but direct. Sir, I understand your concern. But I assure you, anyone working on your vehicle is supervised and trained thoroughly. Maya here may be new, but she's sharp and capable. You'll be in good hands. The man hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Well, I just don't want any delays. You won't have any, Marcus said firmly. And if anything comes up, I'll personally step in to make sure it's right. The customer nodded, albeit reluctantly. Maya looked down at her gloves, not saying a word. Later in the quiet of the back hallway, she approached Marcus. You didn't have to say all that she said softly. I know what he saw. Hoodie braids, no ring on my finger. Doesn't scream trusted mechanic. Marcus leaned against the wall and looked at her. I saw the same thing in your eyes that Ray had in his. And the same thing I used to see in mine. You're not here to prove people wrong, you're here to do the job right. Let that speak for itself. She nodded slowly, eyes bright but unreadable. By closing time, Maya had successfully replaced a damaged alternator with Jonas' supervision. The customer left satisfied. And while no applause filled the room, Marcus noticed something small shifts. Jonas laughing with her at the end of the day. One of the other junior techs offering her a leftover soda. Even Frank kept his mouth shut. As Marcus watched her clean up her bay, he realized something. This was what change looked like. Not fireworks, not dramatic speeches, just quiet defiance against old norms, one fair decision at a time. He headed into his office, pulled out the notebook, and wrote at the bottom of the page, hire people who know the grind. Protect them until they don't have to flinch when they walk through the door. The battle wasn't over. But Marcus had found his ground, and now he was determined to hold it for everyone who came after. A few days later, as the shop settled into its new rhythm, the real test came not through words, but through action. Maya was working alone on an oil change when a customer, impatient and visibly irritated, accused her of scratching his car's fender. He raised his voice, drawing attention, and demanded to speak to the manager. In the past, someone like Marcus would have been expected to stay quiet or let the situation escalate, while the blame quietly fell on the newest, most vulnerable pair of shoulders. But not anymore. Marcus calmly approached, reviewed the security footage, and proved the scratch had been there when the car arrived. Then, in front of the customer and the entire staff, he looked Maya in the eye and said, "You did nothing wrong, and you won't be taking the fall for someone else's assumptions." The room was quiet. Not from fear, but from understanding. A line had been drawn, and it would hold. Maya smiled, not wide, but the kind that said she finally felt safe where she stood. Sometimes standing up for others means they learn to stand tall for themselves. Leadership isn't about status, it's about service. If this story resonated with you, would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever spoken up when it mattered most? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to join us for more powerful real-world stories that remind us who we are and who we can become.